Welcome to the Deconstruction Podcast. Today we are with Sascha here from IPS, and she's going to kick off one of our episodes on the social series.
Social City series?
It's a tongue twister. We should have called the program something that was easier
it's
to
not
say.
fair for diverse people, you know.
We are in the beautiful
over here.
We are in the beautiful Bakery Lane this afternoon. We've chosen Bakery Lane to come to you for the podcast this afternoon because it's really integrated with the Helix community. We've been in Bakery Lane now for more than 4 years. I love that the lane is full of small businesses like ours that are kicking goals. Lots of female-owned businesses in the laneway as well. If you fancy a wine, go and see the beautiful Hannah. Here she comes past us now. You're going to see her in the background with her headphones on. She runs the wine bar behind me and absolutely kills it. So if you love a nice wine, come into Bakery Lane. So community is a really important part of the Helix philosophy, and our relationship with IPS is part of that community. Sascha and I have had a friendship for a number of years now and have developed it from there to really support each other's businesses as they've grown and developed over the years. I have had the pleasure of sitting on the advisory board for Sascha's business and seen it go bloody skyrocket off and away. So I couldn't be more proud to have seen the success that she's experienced in her career, in her business. And I'm so honoured that you agreed to come and talk to us this afternoon and tell us all about your business and what's next on the horizon and the impact that IPS is making. The podcast is all about social impact, and it's called the Social City series, which is difficult to say, and the Deconstruction Podcast, because we really just want to break down any kind of barriers or misconceptions about what it's like to work in the construction industry, what it's like to be a woman in the construction industry, and to really open our listeners to hearing from and experiencing people that have been around the traps in the construction industry and have really paved the way for the next generation that are coming through. And that's why we've invited you to be on the podcast. So I'd like to kick off by asking you to tell us a little bit about how you got started in the industry and the development of your career. I know that you've experienced kind of a similar background to me in that you've had to get good at your profession and then also good at being a businesswoman. So if you can just talk to us about, you know, where it started for you and what your career progression has been to date.
No worries, and thanks for having me, ladies. Look, it's, you know, you could speak for a very long time, so I'll try and keep it brief. Probably starting with, you know, what's a relevant question with engineering and construction in school and education. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what engineering was. I was good at maths and science, so I was told by the school counsellors to be a doctor. And I actually, you know, from year 4, it was in my head to be a doctor. So I started down that path of doing a science degree in Brisbane before ultimately going to med. Very quickly realised I didn't like biology, I didn't like blood, and I don't much like people. So I realised that maybe wasn't the right career choice for me. When I was studying science, though, I was in some joint classes with some of the boys from my college at St. John's, and I said, you know, what are you studying? And it was engineering, and that was it. So after a year of science, I changed to an engineering degree. The first year was a common year. You got to try each discipline. It's changed a bit now. You can choose a common year or go straight into your choice. So I did electrical, civil, chemical, all the different ones in year 1, and chose the simplest, civil engineering. Anyway, so that's how it started. I was fortunate enough, like the young lady across from me at the moment, to get an internship quite early in my uni degree. So I was in second year. And because of,
Shout out to Rio.
shout out my intern, we'll share agreed to the swap. And I was thrust into this internship in second year and was with a design firm, and they tried to get me to do calculations. And I was like, I haven't even learnt this. And I think they were like, and maybe Ree, you'll experience it. They're like, shit, what are we going to do with her? And they they chucked me in the contract and construction team. And that's literally what just changed my world. So I worked in that delivery space from a very young age in my education. And the degree that I did at UQ was very theoretical, very design-based. So having the experience as an intern, I thought, okay, I'll go out and do construction for a few years, learn how things are built, have an appreciation, and then ultimately end up in a design firm, but with that practical knowledge of how things are built. I never ended up in that design firm, and I spent more than 15 years in construction, steel cap, hard hats, sewage treatment plants, 2 babies, and finally got to a point of feeling that I had enough runs on the board and enough career experience to take a different step. When I started and I was Tier 1 construction for 15 years, that was the trajectory I saw for myself. I thought, I'm going to be the managing director one day, CEO one day. Even I was such a smart ass as a first year out grad that at the Christmas party for a large construction company, the CEO spoke, and we went outside and had a drink afterwards, and I tapped him on the shoulder and I said, that'll be me one day. Anyway, this was just where my head was at. But literally I got through 15 years and really looked at the change in my life, had a young family, and I decided it wasn't what I wanted. So that's when I really took my experience, both good and bad, and wanted to go on a trajectory where I hadn't found something that gave me the opportunity of what I wanted and what I wanted to provide. So I built it. And
how did you
started.
how did you take that first step? There might be women out there that have been in like a senior leadership position, whether it's in engineering, law, procurement, whatever it might be, that are thinking, or maybe I could do this for myself. What was the first step and kind of what gave you the motivation or the inspiration to jump out and do it?
I think there's a few things in that. I didn't feel like I was being given the opportunities when I was in the large companies that I thought that I deserved based on what I put in. And I quite frankly got tired of fighting the fight. So that's when I pivoted. So that was one decision I made. One really difficult decision is a financial one, going from, a salary long-term role and decent salary to venturing out on your own to, when you've got a family to feed. I was the, primary breadwinner, as you say, in my house. So there's lots of things to consider. What I thought was, number one, I got to a point in my career that I really appreciated my strengths, but more importantly, I won't say weaknesses, but where my value wasn't as great. And I focused on my strength there, and I didn't try and be all things to all people. So I looked at opportunities that would really play on my strengths. I just kept on thinking, you've had the experience now. You're not just 3 years out. You've walked the walk now, even though I think 15 years into my career, I still had some people in the industry treating me like a grad. So you really have to have your own confidence. And then, practically, I just went and looked for a 6-month opportunity. And I said to myself, if I can, because originally it was just me going out as a contractor.
Start with one.
I just thought, start with one. 6 months gave me enough security from a family perspective and never look back.
One of the things that I really admire about your business and something that we really keep aspiring to and challenging ourselves with in Helix is that culture. All of your people are diehard people that would do anything to support the success of your business. Is there a secret sauce to that? How do you think, what's the secret sauce to the great culture that you have at IPS and all the wonderful people that you've been able to assemblage to support the growth and the prosperity of the business that you've built?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, we actually just got out of a team meeting and we're talking about culture, and I said, there's no governance or hierarchy in culture. It's across all levels of a business. So I think individually you can grow a business to a certain size with you starting the culture, but you need it to then spread like wildfire with your team. And I guess I've been fortunate that, some of the key people I've brought on early in the business have that culture, and probably why they were chosen. Having been in Brizzy for 20 odd years, you get to know people in the industry well, and you get to choose who you want to work with. But one of the simple things that we say, because we are getting a size now that we're getting people that we don't know. For the first few years, it's a mate of a mate or someone knows somebody. But now we're getting, really fresh faces in. But our simple thing is, we need to understand that we owe just as much to the employees that they owe to us in doing their job. So not just that old mentality of, someone works for me, they're here to do a job. It's our responsibility to give back to them and, set up the young ones for future leadership as well. So I think the other secret sauce is just have fun. You know me, I don't take myself too seriously. Ever.
You've got that nice balance between, though, not taking yourself too seriously, but being really serious about the commitment that you have to your clients and the work that you deliver, like never compromising on that, but also bringing some joy into the workplace. And that joy also rubs off on the support services that you have around you, as well as the clients that you work with, the employees that you have. I think it's all contagious.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I think just that balance, like we're all people and, I said that, we joke around a lot. You have to be serious in our jobs. They're serious jobs, but I can be sitting at 1 William Street with key government clients and we can still have a laugh about things. It's not about being unprofessional. It's about still being a human and enjoying the little things each day.
Yep. And you've been on a great growth trajectory at IPS and kicked some amazing goals over the last couple of years. Is there something that you have your eye on as the next mountain to climb or what you want for the company, say, within the next 12 months or going forward?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think now's probably the first time that I really have a bit of a vision about where I want the company to go, because it was, as you said, quite quick and unplanned, really. We were just
method to that madness.
Method to madness. But we were just doing us, and you don't realize it, but then all of a sudden you turn around and go, oh shit, we probably need to have some strat plans and some things in place because of the size it's getting to. So we're just reaching that maturity now, and that's taken us 3 years. So I think for anyone thinking about starting your own business, there's a lot of business coaches out there. I'm not saying they don't add value, but it took me 3 years to even be in a position to put a strat plan together.
Yeah.
So I didn't know. So we were really trial and error, and now we're knowing. So to answer your question, something that I'd like to do, we've recently joined Sequana Group.
Congratulations on that too.
Thank you very much. So I'm really excited about that because now across the East Coast, we're over 200 people in our team.
Wow.
So it's the first time. I still feel, IPS in Brisbane, we've got a good footprint, we've got good customers, but we're still small. We're still competing against international tier 1, whether it's advisory firms, finance firms or design firms. We're still a little fish in a very big pond. So we had a strategy session with the Sequana Group in Byron recently, and I did a little skit, and it was about Goldilocks. So we had 3 chairs, and we had a client who was our chair of our board come up, and I said, oh, Mr. Chair, do you want to sit in this seat? And we had a tier 1 sign behind it, big 4 tier 1 company. And he sat in it, and I said, oh, does that feel a little bit too big? A little bit too impersonal? A little bit too long to get decisions made? Oh, yes, it does. Yes, it does. And then over here was a very small company. So it feel a bit small. You don't feel you've got the breadth if you need more resources. Yeah, it's a bit small. And then, of course, the Guana Group in the middle. Sat in that chair. Feels just right. So I guess from a industry perspective, we don't want to be a tier 1, but we want to give big clients the opportunity for something different, with a locally owned team across the East Coast that really is committed to changing the industry norms in terms of what we deliver. So that's what I'm most excited about.
Amazing. And I know that you've got involvement in the procurement side of things and in project delivery. One of the key objectives with Morgan establishing Helix Impact Solutions is to look at projects that might be getting off the ground. The money's going to be spent on the project anyway. What else can we achieve? What's the greater impact that we can have with the spend that we're making on projects? Whether it's a social impact, whether it's apprentices and trainees, whether it's diversity and inclusion, how can we make the dollars that we're spending go further and how can we achieve more with the spend that is happening. Just wondering if based on your experiences and the way that your business has developed, if you think that there's room for that to be happening on projects, and whether there's a capacity, in your view, to be able to be strategic in the procurement spend or in the projects, say, for example, that might be kicking off for the Olympics. How can we make sure that what we're building has a lasting impact for communities?
Great question. I think often policy is driven by industry first. So at the moment in Queensland procurement policy, there's certain percentages on Indigenous, local content and various other things which are mandated under policy. That, as I said, was driven by tenderers putting in submission, and I've got a better Indigenous percentage than you. I've got a better, local benefit than you. And the government said, okay, these are standard things we're going to measure. I think then once it becomes policy, it can become stagnant. And I kind of feel that we're there now. So everybody knows those metrics. Everyone's pretty much achieving them now. So I think it's our job as an industry to lead, again, in terms of government looking at those metrics, because we're all ticking those boxes now. So if we want to make a real sustained difference moving forward, I think we need to take it from the macro level that it's at and put it into a more micro level. And I think, the companies that, and it will be private sector, the companies that bring that to tenders, they're going to be the companies that make it a norm, and then it's going to become standardized across. So I guess the more that, in your role, influence at that private level to get these initiatives, funded and in place and try and make it a norm for our projects, because the demand for everything to deliver what we need to deliver in Southeast Queensland, not
Skills, labour.
it's more than dollars, and it needs to be quantified and qualified better than it has today. And I'm doing a big project at the moment with government. I won't mention the name, but government are really looking at those non-typical benefits. So we've got
criteria.
We've got, the normal business case framework, normal ways to assess, but really focusing on what are the qualitative things that haven't been able to be quantified before. A challenge I'll give to you, and maybe it's a little bit of a collaboration, is the best way to get money from Treasury is to be able to quantify things. So you need to come up with a social impact. I need to come up with a formula. And we need to be able to quantify this and pass on to government.
There's different mechanisms already that we use to measure. A lot of the time, pre-projects will have things like social impact assessments, where we have a look at what the possible positive or negative impacts could be. We also have things where we look at return on investment. So we can use strategies like that as well to forecast what we might be able to do as an outcome, but then we can also measure it along the way as well. As long as we set clear objectives and then know what good looks like, how are we going to know if we achieve that? And then putting in those data collection mechanisms to capture that.
It's definitely part of the consulting services that Morgan offers, though. If you've got a business and you're looking at implementing, whether it's, a wellness program for your people, or you're bringing in some kind of new initiative, you're trying to achieve some kind of outcome on your project, really helping you to set up what are the goals that you're trying to work towards, how we're going to measure whether those goals have been achieved, and really helping businesses to track that and, say, report back to their board or report back to the project team about whether those things have been achieved. So I think it's really true that nothing changes, or it's very difficult to communicate change without some kind of data or something people can touch to back it up. I think that if we're just talking anecdotally and we don't actually have that evidence to back up the true, real benefits that come from the implementation of these programs, they're not going to be sustainable.
And you can't manage what you can't measure. So
Exactly.
I think that's a real struggle, and that puts that emphasis back too on that evidence base, and having the data to support the claims as well is really beneficial.
So just talking about, you said, it's hard to, I guess, measure and track and manage without data. I went to an amazing seminar recently. It was at Engineers Australia. They invited engineers execs here in Brizzy, and it was hosted by Dr. Nick Fleming, former chair of Engineers Australia. And my mind was blown from this presentation. It wasn't engineering, it was society and what we need to do as a generation, as an industry. And I'll just look down at my phone for 1 second because I think it's really important with what we're talking about here. So we're at this point called, and I won't pretend to be a PhD person in this, so I'll butcher it, which will be even funnier for the people that know what I should be talking about. But we're at a point in our generation and our society at the moment that we're in this what's called a long finger of instability. So I'll summarize it in my Sascha Kurz engineering way, what I took from this presentation. So we have been so fortunate in this generation. Yes, we've had COVID. Yes, we've had a few things. But if you look at generations before us, every generation before us, we've been blessed. It's been quite easy. That's changing. So part of the presentation that Dr. Fleming gave was a long finger of instability makes great disruption more probable. So the reason for me to bring it up now is the way that he explained it is in past decades in our generation, we've influenced at a certain level. So if you look at the full levels across society, we've got individuals, families, organisations, economies, societies and ecosystems. And the long finger of instability is at the moment, over time, we're influencing every single one of those levels. And we have not had to influence and impact every one of those levels in our generation. So in terms of society, I think, if you took that, and we need to measure and qualify against each of those. So from an individual, through families, organisation, economies, societies and ecosystems, we have to hit every one of those. That's our responsibility. And I think that's a massive change. And because of that, I see the work that you and your team is critically important in helping, the construction industry, because Nick's an engineer. He talked to a room of engineers and we're like, holy shit. And we're not even real construction people, right? So trying to get that message down to our delivery team is going to be quite hard. So, maybe working, even if you touch base with Nick, that's what he does. He does a lot of policy stuff with government and make that in a way that construction can understand it. And then, you might find in future tenders, government's asking how are you influencing at all those levels, so.
And it's the balance too. I think we get asked a lot for local benefit or local content, or what are you doing for our community, because that's where we're building. But then as part of that, we also have to step out sometimes and look at that broader picture of how that, if we look at southeast Queensland, for example, how we're building in the Gold Coast or Ipswich, that still has an impact on Brisbane and transport and infrastructure and all these things. So while I believe, I guess from my social background, that placemaking and community and that is so valid and so important and should drive a lot of the, I guess, initial concepts and design and usability and things like that, because they have that local understanding and knowledge. We still have to step out and have a look at it in a broader context as well. So I think that, definitely makes sense to me across the whole impact of everybody.
You've always had an interest, in my observation, at what the next generation is doing and how you can be a positive impact or be a positive role model for younger people coming up through the industry. Is there a moment from when you were younger in your career, whether it was, some kind of ally or a mentor or someone that supported your career, that you think made a difference to help driving you forward? And how do you try to bring that in within your business to make sure that your younger talent is supported and developed into being the best that they can possibly be?
Yeah, look, I think for me personally, mentoring, and it's scaled depending on the personality of the individual. So some people might, benefit from a lot of mentoring, others from less or whatever. I guess for myself, I've always been self-driven, and I was actually having this conversation with somebody yesterday. It took me a long time to get a mentor, so I started in 2000, doing internships, and I didn't have a mentor until 2020. So like a true mentor was 20 years into my career. I had some great, more informal supporters along the way, but it wasn't really offered to me in a way that was attractive enough, I guess, for me to grab. So that's probably just a thought, like if I went through 20 years in this industry and nothing was really stuck with me about having a mentor, then maybe, there's learnings from that. I am fortunate enough now to have an amazing mentor, and I think that's really, you get to a point in your career that it's just as much support as challenge. There's someone that you want to be able to challenge you and really test you on critical things, and that's really important.
Because that's how you grow, I think,
100%.
especially as you get further on in your career. You're helping others grow, and like there's all that, give, but then someone to actually challenge you to get above and beyond the things that you're already capable of or you already know is you in your comfort zone.
Yeah, and I think that's maturity, right, as well. Like, I mean, if I got challenged when I was younger, I probably would have cracked the shits and gone home and cried over a wine. But now I do appreciate it. And it's also personal. Like, if you're comfortable in yourself, you can take constructive feedback and challenges. So to answer the second half of your question, in terms of our business and what we do with our people, we try and have it grassroots, every day in the office, people supporting people. We have a lot of people that join the business for the ability to be able to try something new or in a transition period of their career. So in a way, I feel that's a mentor and a supportive role that our business is playing outside of that traditional role. So a great example, one of my engineers, she did 3 years with a tier 2 construction company, got nearly burnt out and wanted to try consulting. Yeah. My initial reaction was, you haven't done 20 years, go back and then come back. And then I took my old school hat off and went, sure, come along. Anyway, the most amazing thing is that she's been able to try the consulting world, the client side world, and worked out, without her being here to say that that's where she's comfortable in. And it's not very often when you're in big companies, you get real opportunities to try so many different things. So that's what I'm really proud of as a business, that we're a safe space for someone to try, and the mentoring comes through support, comes through having a net under somebody, letting them run, but always being there to pick up if needed, to not let them fall too far.
I think we fall into that trap of you have a vacancy or you have a need in your business, or you hire someone for that role, and then a lot of the time, once you have them there, you actually realize that their skill set could lie somewhere else, or they're actually really valuable in another area of your business. So I think that can be a challenge sometimes for people to be able to get the best out of their people with sometimes limited funds, or, you can only take on so many people. So getting the best out of them, I think, is really important, and trying to get people into those roles where they provide the most benefit to the business and our clients as well.
100%. And I guess two things to add to that. Number one, we hire on coffees. So we'll read a CV. You can quickly, like you ladies, work out if technically someone's got the thing. It's then a coffee. And unless I'm in my dual multi-factor authentication period where I tell someone they have to sign it as well and not let just me make rash decisions, most of the time people hide on the spot, from that coffee. The other thing,
My last hire was we met at a wine bar.
yeah.
Right.
There's a theme here.
Last time Riley met me was in this wine bar. That's how I test people out. Like you say, there's a CV, and I expect a certain level of competence and excellence, and we have only the best people from that perspective. But because culture is so important, how people are going to fit together and who they are as a person is really important to me to get to know before I let them in.
Yeah, no, I was going to say the other thing that we're really proud of as a business is our inclusiveness with people from outside of our sector. So our operations managers outside of the sector, our finance manager is outside of the sector and wasn't a finance manager before. Our executive coordinator outside the sector. So what we've found is bringing in people with different experience from different industries, adding so much value to what we do and really challenging us as those technical experts. So I think having that balance of, the technical people you need to deliver the services, but also from the operational and other side, that really great culture and ideas that can come through different people.
Yeah, I think we talk a lot about gender diversity or ethnic diversity or things like that, but we fail to talk about the difference in qualification or education or upbringing, where you grew up, or age, or all these different things that drive that innovation and diversity across the board, whatever it might be, all bring new innovation, new ideas, ways of doing things that we didn't before. I think we fall in that trap of just thinking of those key things that we talk about all the time, but that more holistic approach again to thinking about it is definitely adds value. One lucky last question for you before you go about your impact, because I think you're probably humble at times around how much impact you really have on not just your own business, but the broader industry as well. So, as being the engineer of the year, what do you think you've been able to achieve by, I guess, to encourage people as well? We don't chase recognition, we're all kind of busy doing our day job, but I think it's really important to participate in some of those things because it gets other people involved and it shows other people what you can do. So what do you think that your biggest impact's been from holding that position for the last year?
The greatest moment of that whole thing was just how the team reacted when my name got called out. We actually got talked to by Engineers Australia ahead of the national awards. When they saw us book 3 tables, they were a bit worried. Luckily, I lost. Yeah, it was a real honour to get it, and I was very humbled by it. But to your point, I did see it as a platform, and it's really awkward because outwardly facing, it might seem like a platform for self-promotion, but it's not. For me, it was a platform for the profession. Everything that I've got out of it personally was a platform for women. It was actually, I just emceed the 2024 awards, 25 awards, a couple of weeks ago, and the Engineer of the Year and the Young Emerging Engineer of the Year were both females. So that's 2 years in a row, both of the main awards went to females. So I think, being able to promote that, and it's not a against men thing, it's trying to raise the percentage of women in our industry, which we know is low. And I know our 2 companies, you guys are trailblazers in terms of your numbers in women, but we always try and strive to double, if not triple, the industry standard ourselves. And then my business, I wanted to use the platform to see how we could help impact and influence across, across things. But a great outcome, I'll give you an example from that, is I was asked to speak at an EA Ignite event earlier in the year. So it wasn't a massive event, maybe 50 people at the EA office. Nothing special like our debate. But I was loving it. Anyway, long story short, before I spoke, a man came up to me and said, "Oh, I'd like to introduce you to this certain lady. She's been in Australia for a certain number of years. She's an engineer from Bhutan and, hasn't been able to have the opportunity to start a career here yet." I said, "Sure, I'm just about to speak, but, send her my way afterwards." And there's a long and short version of it. I'll give you the short. She works for me. So she joined the company about 3 weeks or 4 weeks after that chance meeting, and she's a fantastic addition. And, that wouldn't have been possible if I didn't hold that position for the time. So just the benefits are immense. But you do have to kind of put on a brave face and do a lot of talks and podcasts and stuff as well. So
Other thing is, some women talk about, this imposter syndrome. And I know early on in my career, I was from North Queensland and, called everybody mate. And I just tried to push that out of myself and to try to be what I thought a young lawyer was supposed to be and how a young lawyer was supposed to act. And I'd often walk into rooms where I'd be the only woman and I'd feel like a real tightness in my chest. I don't feel any of that anymore, and I really feel comfortable in who I am as a person, and that's who you're going to get is the girl that grew up in North Queensland, and you either like her or you don't, or you either want to do business with her or you don't. And that's something that I really admire about you as well, that you're very authentic in your dealings with your clients. You know, you don't get a different version of you now and a different version of you if you're, with a client or with the government, or you don't treat anybody differently, whether it's the intern or whether it's the CEO of whatever company. Is that something that you've worked on, or do you think that's just part of your personality, that you've always been like that? And what advice would you give others who are trying to work on that?
Probably respond to that in 3 ways. So in terms of learning, my first project out of uni, I'll try and be quick. I was a site engineer on a construction project. I was about 21, I think. Probably still in the day that you're allowed to wear shorts on site. So I think I rocked up in these little shorts, went out on site, subbies, yeah. And there was a steel fixer. He had a bull ring through his nose, no hair, and then mullet, tats, singlet, probably stubbies as well.
Yeah.
And I heard him kind of whisper or probably didn't whisper to be honest, but I heard him say, "What's the secretary doing out here on site?" And I kind of had a moment where I went, we could probably take this 1 or 2 ways. I can crack the shits and go to HR and make a complaint, or I can, take it a different approach. And I went option B, a different approach. And I just, jumped in with him and said, can you tell me about how you're tying the steel, why you're doing it that way? So I understood when I had the reinforcing designs, if they didn't follow the plans, why weren't they, Anyway, we formed a great friendship on site, and it taught me, really early on, there's so many hands that go to play in our projects, and, having a different personality according to hierarchy is just not a nice thing to do as a human, I don't think. So I did have a few experiences in my career where I learned that. Also the other way, where people would be treating me like rubbish because I was down here and out there. So I did learn from that. I think naturally I'm one of 5 children, and we lived in 17 houses, and I grew up in 3 different countries. So I think naturally I had to be resilient and be able to make friends with all different walks of life. So I think that definitely helped me along the way. And I think the biggest thing for me, to your example, Janelle, was probably like the opposite. So you probably went from like the ochre and had to be rounded. I was from the Sunshine Coast, so in the middle. And then I got into construction. I probably had to get very ochre. So I had to, put my fake tats on before the workday and check out my swear book and hang the calendars of the ladies in my office. And so it was quite a learning curve for me transitioning out of construction into consulting and client side. I knew that I had a good rapport, but I recognised, and this is something my mentor helped me with, that I needed to soften my edges. It was never rude, but it was just softening edges and approaching still with your authentic self, but a bit different for what I do now. So I feel that I've spent a lot of time on that, really reflecting and being less reactive. I think as a construction engineer on site, you're bred to be reactive, a little bit aggressive, whereas now I'm kind of quite the opposite, and I found that approach is actually more successful. Who would have thought? It took me 20 years to get there. So,
And authenticity looks different too. So how I would, talk to an apprentice was different to how I would talk to a site manager, which was different again to how I'd talk to my project manager. So you do have to meet people where they're at as well. And I think you can absolutely still do that and still be yourself.
agreed.
Well, thank you very much for joining us for the Social City Series podcast. Woohoo! Get that one out. It was a great pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for carving out the time. I know you're a busy, busy lady, so we really appreciate you coming to have a chat with us. And we look forward to the great debate and giving those engineers the walloping they deserve.
We'll have you back to find out the
Yeah,
results.
we'll have to do round 2 after that. But thanks very much for having me, ladies, and yeah, we'll see you on the 12th of November.
Beautiful. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in today. Before we wrap up, here's an important disclaimer. Everything we've discussed is for information purposes only and should not be considered personalised advice. Whether we touched on legal, financial, medical, about your specific situation before taking any action. Got any questions about today's episode or ideas for future topics? Reach out to the Helix team. We'd love to hear from you. If you found value in today's conversation, please share it with someone who might benefit or connect with us on social media. Thanks for being part of our community, and we'll catch you next time.